in good old Kitsap County. It's February 1. This January is already in the books. I don't know where it went, but it's gone. It's going so fast. But as you know, we have this great conversation on Wednesdays at 3 p.m. So let's jump right into it. I'm going to bring our first person on here. Have my volume up there. Katie Sharp. How you doing there, Katie?
Hi, Marwan. I'm doing good. It was so nice to see you all last week. So I saw you a
I
lot, and I'm
know.
excited to talk about Project Connect.
Face to face, right?
It was fun.
Instead of Zoom. I love it. And then, of course, we have the executive director of BHA, Jill Stanton. Jill, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Nice to see you.
I know. Nice to see you too. Glad that you are here today. And you know, the league would not be set without Matt Garrett. Matt, how you doing?
Hello, good to be here. I'm doing good.
All right. So the crew is all here. This is the normal lineup, except for on the second Tuesday when we have Kirsten that comes with us. But this isn't the second Tuesday. It's the first Wednesday. So let's jump right into it. A lot has happened. Matter of fact, I can't remember the last time the four of us have been on from at the beginning. So lots to unpack. And the first thing I wanted to do is just kind of talk about Project Connect because that was a very big undertaking, super impactful. I was just it was just awesome. But I don't want to talk about it. I want to hear it from you. So if y'all would talk about Project Connect and what it meant and just kind of an after action report, if you will.
Well, Matt, I didn't see you. Matt, were you there?
I like to do the point in time count in the field. So I
Okay.
was with a team, and we were out on Wheaton Way and went to some encampments and went around. So yeah, Katie, why don't you talk about Project Connect? I can talk a little bit about
Yeah.
some of the point in time outreach event, but why don't you take Project
The
Connect?
neat thing is, it was a really coordinated effort, and Kirsten will tell you, like, it's great to have a professional outreach team that's on it, and just to have the capacity to plan it and get everyone involved. So Project Connect works in conjunction with Point in Time Council. I think that's a great segue. Um, so it was really neat because we planned our waitlist opening that we opened last Friday to correspond with Project Connect. So as you all know, Rent Cafe, our online portal, requires a registration, or if you've already registered, you have to remember your login. So it adds a little bit of, we don't open waitlists often, so maybe some people aren't logging in all the time. So just to get the word out prior to the waitlist opening, like, hey, check your account, or hey, register. And don't forget to log in on that one day, on that Friday, to do the waitlist opening or apply for the waitlist, which is actually the easiest part of it. The account is the more tricky part. So it's nice to get out there into the community and talk about it. And at first, Bremerton Housing Authority wasn't necessarily going to have a presence at Project Connect because we don't offer usually immediate services to the public, because many of our services you can only get through, getting on the wait list. But so happens our wait list was opening. So it was really fun to be there for the community partners and the public to talk about what Bremerton Housing Authority can do. And I found so much value out of going to all three events and seeing everyone and providing resources or clarification on our programs. There's just so many after effects. It's just not for one purpose. It's actually for many purposes to have these events and talk more about how we can help each other as partners, and what role Bremerton Housing Authority plays in the bigger picture. So it was really nice. I talked to a lot of people, and I really had a great time.
Yeah, I didn't go to Project Connect. Katie was our BHA representative, so I don't have a lot to add to that experience. But what I will say is that one of the things that is so difficult on me personally and just our staff in general is not is people calling us all the time. I'm sure Matt and Marwan, you've experienced the same. People are in crisis or maybe on the verge of being in crisis and calling us, and as Katie said, this is not what BHA does. Where we ours are a longer term rental assistance that you have to get on the wait list for and you have to wait for, but that doesn't stop people from calling. And so I at the end of one of the Project Connect days, I don't think it was I think it was the second day. Um, someone brought me in the resource guide for Kitsap County. I think it's created by the Salvation Army. Is that correct? And it just was so nice to have that because that's something that I have not gotten my hands on before. And so it was something that we can just provide right away to people, provide to our staff, and um, we have some of the best staff I've ever had the privilege of serving with that have huge hearts and board members too. And one of our board members and at least one of our staff, but probably more, have this thing where they have backpacks in their car that they just have ready to give out, full of,
Wow.
you know, yeah, they just do this. Like, we didn't ask them to do this. We didn't even know that they were doing this. They just saw the need and do this. And one of them is our IT um, manager and senior manager, and he was showing me this backpack, and he brought me one to keep in my car because he heard me say, yeah, sometimes I just feel like at a loss. And he's like, yeah, I used to feel that way too. And now I do this. And so he hands me this backpack full of all of this stuff, that you can just give out and meaningful things too. And so, stuff for shelter, stuff to eat, just things. But he's like, now we have this resource guide. So then he brings me the resource guide. He goes, put this in that backpack I gave you. So I just think that there was sometimes little things can be big things. And that was what I took away from Katie's experience is just everybody coming together to figure out who does what can be helpful for those of us who need to rely on other agencies to direct people to.
Absolutely. Well, if you allow me to indulge, I'll share, my experience. We were there in double capacity, one as G2 tabling, and then also as the conduit. And what was amazing to me is, I worked with many of these agencies for years and continue to learn new things every single time. So with Georgia's House, I didn't know they were the only, uh, shelter in the state of Washington that allowed, boys into the age of 12 in there. So that was huge. And that was new. And we worked with them. We donated beds to them. So that was incredible. We were able to transport folks to the event so they can have access to the resources, which I thought was really important. And then, of course, as we know, this weather is really cold right now, and the severe weather shelters are opening. And so, being able to host at where the severe weather shelters are was really impactful. So, speaking to the church members at a few different locations and the coordinator of what it takes not only to volunteer and stay tuned for a post on if you would want your organization or your church to, offer their building up to shelter folks. So I've never heard that conversation, and that's not on the website. So that was huge. Just a really great experience. And I think it's important for us to kind of spend time with each other also. So, talking with the folks from Kitsap Legal and learn about the Clear Hotline. There were so many different resources there. The HARP program and, their connections and getting their donations. I don't know if you saw some of the jackets that the Firefighters Without Borders were handing out for free. There's like $300 jackets, and it was just really an awesome experience. I got my flu shot. Like, I could go on and on and on, but it was really a tremendous thing to do. And then kind of coordinating that with the point in time count, which is so important, and providing that access to so many people in the county and moving it not just because I haven't done the Project Connect before, but moving it outside of Bremerton and having one in Paulsbo and Port Orchard, I think is awesome too, because there is the unhoused exist out there in pretty big numbers. If you look at the point in time count and giving them those resources and not having them to have to try to transport all the way down to Bremerton to access those, I think was awesome.
Yeah, and just you're right, Jill, that Salvation Army did start it, but I just want to give a shout out to Priya from Kitsap Library, who did the latest update for the Sally's Guide or the Kitsap County Research. And she put in a ton of time, and it looks really clean and good. She did some formatting and did the really tough job of pestering all of us, right, to make sure that all our information was updated. So just wanted to give a shout out.
And that was on the behalf of the Kitsap Housing and Homelessness Coalition. And so that guide that Jill's talking about I was just sitting on my desk, and at one point Jill comes out with it, and I was like, "Where did you get that?" And because somebody had seen it, and I had given it to them, and then they ended. Anyway, as she said, it was really neat because it shows like there isn't a need for this guide to say we really only provide long-term services. However, we can show you where to go next, and that was a huge piece of our tabling experience at Project Connect, to have that guide there, and to even talk about the coalition and talk about this network of partners that comes together every month and shares our services, does presentations, and we want to continue to get the word out about the coalition, because one of the main parts of the coalition is to help make Project Connect happen. And so it was just so nice to see, after a few years, a lot of us hadn't done it before. And I felt personally it was really successful. Do you want me to show you where the guide can be found?
Ooh, I would love that. And while
So,
Katie's pulling that up, another thing was by broadcasting that information out. Shout out to Marcia Cutting, for those of you who know who she is. She contacted me and said, "Hey, will you please ask Georgia House if they need some of these assistive devices, canes and wheelchairs and things of that nature?" So, making this available when folks can't come is, I think, essential. All right, so you have the
yeah, so you see the website right now, the kitsaphhc.org website.
Yep.
Yeah, we see it.
Okay, because it was weird how it was showing, so I just want to make sure. Anyway, again, this is our coalition on updating it and making it more user-friendly. But right now, you can find some important links. I wanted to say the resource guide is in the middle, and just click download for the PDF. And then this is the 2-page guide. It's you fold it in half. You just print it on both sides and fold it in half. I'm going to see if I can zoom a little here. So this is the front page, of course, and this is the back page, and then the 2 inside pages. So there's so much attention that people want to add more. Just talk about what goes in the guide, what goes on the website. So we're always improving, but it's been really nice to have.
Yeah, that is awesome. Thank you for that, Katie. And I think when you hit download, it might have opened up on another tab, so we still see the home page there.
Here, share this tab instead. There we go. Does that help? Does that work? No. I don't even know. Stop sharing. I'm trying to use Restream as it should, but but now you're all black to me. I don't know. What are you seeing right now?
We're still seeing the main page of the resource guide.
I don't know, Marwan. I might have to go out and back in.
Well, if you can, I'll turn it off and see if you can unshare and then reshare. That might
We're
help.
seeing the web.
Marwan, did you want me to answer Rob Dent's question?
Oh, yeah, let me jump in there. Oh, yeah, okay. Jill, can you tell me if there are any more EHV out there? I know that we are out of them, but I don't know if anyone, including BHA, has some.
Yeah, that's a good question. So we got 38 total. We have 33 people leased up with those vouchers now. So there's 5 that are unleased, but all 5 vouchers are with people who are shopping for housing right now. And we think all 5 of those people will be successful in finding housing, but that's never a guarantee. So right now we don't have any available. But if you are an organization that needs some, please keep in contact with us, because sometimes people move, sometimes they decide they just can't use a voucher. So we always want to make sure that we have other people ready to go. And in addition, I'll just mention, while we don't have any more emergency housing vouchers right now, we do know that HUD is going to put another allocation of some sort of vouchers out there. We don't know if they'll be classified as emergency housing vouchers or something else, but Last year, I think they put out 29,000 new vouchers as emergency housing vouchers, and
Wow.
this
Okay.
year they're going to put out like 12,000, I think. So it's less, but I would expect that Bremerton and Housing Kitsap would get something. So if they come out as emergency housing vouchers or another specialty program like that, they wouldn't have to go through our normal housing choice voucher wait list, but we don't know that yet. We'll update the community as soon as we know anything. And then the other update on vouchers that I would say just to just note and be aware of is that we have added preferences to our administrative plan. So what that means is that if there's certain households or populations that are listed in a preference, such as somebody fleeing from domestic violence, um, we can we can get them a voucher without them necessarily being on our wait list, or even if they are on our wait list, moving them to the top of our wait list. We typically work through other organizations to do that so that it's not so subjective to the housing authority making the decision. Right now, we work primarily with the YWCA, but we're hoping to work with more organizations and formalize a preference strategy plan. We're working on that right now, hoping to roll that out within the next month or so. So that would be another way to get a voucher without necessarily having to wait until your name comes up on a wait list.
And I know that question was coming up because folks are still calling into D2 and asking about those vouchers. And so Stephanie asked me to ask you. And I said, well, Jill will be on tomorrow. I'm not going to remember that. So this is this is the space to do that. That's one of the reasons why they come on, not only to share information, but to be accessible. So, this is the time. This is the place. So that's
Absolutely.
awesome. Thank you for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Jill, as you're, are you going to be opening up for like other organizations to pitch preference plans, or is that all going to be internal, or what's the process for deciding the next round of preferences?
Yeah, that's a good question. So at first, it was just going to be, organizations, if you serve these clients listed in our preference plan,
Mm-hmm.
we'll work directly with you. But because there's been so many, I feel like we need to have a more formalized plan, and so we're working through that now. So I can't answer that question exactly, but it'll probably work somehow where we'll say here is all the preferences,
Yeah.
and we want to work through organizations, because what we have found is that if a client comes to us with an organization or a caseworker or some sort of support, they are much more likely to find housing than if they just get on our wait list and they're on their own. So we're formalizing this plan, but part of it will be, you are the household that has this preference and you're working with one of these organizations that are listed, or, if it's an organization that we don't know of, that you can bring that forward as well. And we will consider any organization that serves the preferences listed in our admin plan.
Awesome. I know we would love to have some of our folks, our homeless, case managed folks have access to some preferences. So it's really exciting that you're exploring that, and we'll definitely look forward to what that process looks like. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think, it is awesome. And we recognize that also means that we use a voucher. And so people who are on our wait list then without a preference are that much longer on our wait list. So we want to be very mindful of that, because, we want to be able to serve everybody. And, you may not be in a situation that is listed as a preference, but you might still really need that voucher, right? Because without that, you may be quickly in a position where you're on the preferences. So we will definitely limit the preferences to a certain amount, but we're not sure where that amount is right now.
That makes sense.
There's a lot to balance.
That totally makes sense. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're in our sharing portion. I think it's a great segue from Project Connect into organizational updates. So who would like to jump in on those updates? KCR, BHA?
Matt, why don't you go?
Sure. So I've got a few numbers because it is February now, so I've got some January numbers for you, Marwan.
All right.
our KEPA program. So total for January. So we sent 91 purchase orders, or 91 kind of applications we sent up to our fiscal team. 39 of those were still buy and fours. 29 were legal, and 23 were finishing up the wait list. So that's somewhat, and so let me explain that, because our wait list has been closed and the buy and four program is now, we're not accepting referrals from our buy and four partners. But as you know, sometimes the applications take a while. So that's why we're finishing up that last little bit of the wait list. We're finishing up the last, right? Because we got some referrals like right at the end of December, and so those are finished up being processed. So we might have a few other referrals from our wait list and from our buy and four partners, even in February, as we work to finish those up. We also served a little bit less in January because we're switching grants, and again, our general public folks you don't need to worry about this, but that's why there was a little bit of a delay as we're moving from our TRAP to our next kind of ERAP grant, and so that takes a little administration, a little bit of work to kind of transition. So that's why there's a little bit of less. But all told is about 500,000. Actually, a little bit over that, 500,000. So we're hoping to get that a little bit higher. But again, with some of our reduced staffing levels and also a little bit of pause, we're pretty happy with that. And we expect to kind of be between 600,000 and $1 million per month, kind of for this next kind of spend down period. So, and again, for folks that are trying to get help, we're still only taking referrals from our legal partners. So the wait list is going to remain closed, probably at least for the next little bit. If that changes, we will let folks know. But we do plan in February and on to still be taking referrals from Dispute Resolution Center, Kitsap Legal Services, and Northwest Justice. But Dispute Resolution Center is the primary. And those are for folks that actually are getting a 14-day pay or vacate, actually in the eviction process, right? So they will be evicted if rent is not paid. And that's kind of our prioritization strategy as we're kind of in spend down. There's still some money left to be spent, but we're kind of in that phase and probably will be, into summer, and we'll kind of see how that goes. At some point, we will transition to the permanent program, but we're not there yet. But once we do, I'll kind of talk about what that will look like. That'll be quite a bit different and include a buy and four component. Any questions about that, Marwan?
No, that sounds good to me. So 500,000 in January, it's going to ramp up to about 600,000 to $1 million to $1.5 million, and then that's gonna catch the people that are on the wait list. And then at this point, the program is done. I do believe President Biden is now kind of looking at post-COVID and is kind of cutting off that spigot of resources. Is that did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, so you are correct, and this is something we're starting to communicate about. We're not sure exactly how this is going to look, and I think this will be another podcast probably with Kirsten and myself and really whoever else. But I think Kirsten can really speak to this as far as how that's going to affect some of our services. We do expect a lot of the COVID funds to really start dropping off, starting in June, right? And that's why we're in this kind of spend down period. There might be a little bit, and I know we're working to really try to get us through this year, right? One thing we're working is to try to accept at least referrals from the legal folks throughout this year. That might change, but that's our goal, right? Is to keep that flow open, right? Because that's prevented a lot of evictions. But definitely in 2024, the amount of rent assistance is not going to look the same, right? We're about 16, like I talked about last year, we're about 16 million. We're going to be probably less than half of that this year, right? That's why, right, we're kind of in that ramp down period. We're definitely going to be under 8, maybe even 6, kind of depending on how, at the end of the year, what it looks like. And then probably 2024, we're estimating around 2 million, right? So you can see that's a pretty big step down process. And that will be a lot more prioritization. And that's why we're still not opening up to the public. We're just serving folks that are in that eviction track, because we have, like Jill talks about, right? That's kind of our preference strategy right now, right? Because we don't have the funds to kind of just do a big wait list opening. If that changes, we'll let you know, depending on kind of what that funding really looks like. We're still waiting on some of the final funding amounts for this year, that last little bit of money to be spent in 2023. But as of now, yeah, we're not expecting, because most of this money was big federal packages, right? American Rescue Plan, Coronavirus Relief Fund, right? These are big federal, stimulus packages that pumped insane amount of money right through our system. And the state, Washington State, is trying, and that's why we're still unknown. Is there's a lot of advocacy right now behind the scenes to try to make sure that the cliff isn't as bad. But there's going to be some type of drop off, and we'll kind of see what that looks like. But I definitely think the community, at least we know it's not going to be as big as it was, and what exactly that is, we're going to have to wait and see what our local state assembly and legislature does, and I think that'll be an ongoing discussion for sure. So I don't have the exacts, but yes, Marwan, you're right. It is going to be a stump down. It's going to be a ramp down. Something that we're really trying to prepare for, administratively, fiscally, and then something that we'll definitely prepare the community for when we have some more exact answers. But that definitely is coming for sure.
And with that said, KCR provides a lot of resources. So, it doesn't mean all the programs are going away. Utility assistance, weatherization, WIC, there's still so many of those great resources that KCR has. Those things will continue on.
Thank you, Marwan. I know sometimes I can, it can sound a little grim because, we're spending down, but no, and actually, in a lot of ways, the program was a tremendous success, right? We've talked about how many people we've helped, and it really was designed for a crisis. And now that we're slowly coming out of crisis mode, right, we might not need as much, but we did inject huge amount of rent assistance during the crisis. And the positive to come out of that, and a big credit to, our local representatives, is that they did create a permanent program, right? Not as big, but that permanent program was not there pre-COVID, and that was a result of advocacy about the success of the TRAP and ERA, eviction rent assistance programs across the different counties and municipalities. And so it is a huge success that now there is a permanent piece, and that is going to be a huge positive, because that should be money that Kitsap is getting every year for eviction rent assistance, whereas we didn't really have that before. We had a little bit through CHG, but that money is really set aside for homeless services, right? You can do eviction prevention, kind of get dinged on the performance metrics. So to have dedicated money now is awesome. And none of our programs are shutting down. It's just going to be a less amount of assistance, right? We're still going to have the RAP team is still going to exist, HSC is still going to exist, housing, energy, weatherization, WIC, Head Start, all those programs are still going to operate, right? It's just some of our direct client assistance programs and energy as well, right? Just won't have as much, but they're still going to be there. We're still going to be working, as hard as we can, and they'll definitely be that help for the community. So it's definitely not all doom and gloom. Thanks, Marwan, for a little positivity there.
Almost good for a little positivity.
Yeah.
Joe, Katie, did you want to just add on a little bit to that, like how BHA may be impacted as these resources kind of sunset, if you will?
Yeah, I think it's kind of the same as what Matt was sharing, as we just won't be able to provide what we've provided before. Now, we were providing mostly to the people that we serve, so they will still get some level of rental assistance, based on their income. So in many ways, those folks are better off, than not having anything. But one of the issues that we are facing that we didn't, really didn't face before because we didn't know is security deposit assistance. And so, yeah, so before we got the emergency housing vouchers, we never provided security deposit assistance. I don't know if KCR did, but we did not. And so then we got this money all of a sudden to provide that. And then we were allowed to use not all of the different buckets of rental assistance, but some of them we were able to use for security deposit assistance. And what that really did for our voucher holders was reduce that a huge barrier. And so we saw more people housed because of that was one of the things that was helpful. And now we've almost run out of that money. And so we've been talking with KCR and asking if we can get, refer some of our clients to them, some of our voucher holders. But we're also talking to other entities to say, hey, this was a real, it was such a positive resource because it got someone housed, and then they're housing their rental assistance. They got a voucher they're taken care of, so it's an ongoing forever thing with just a upfront investment. So that's something we're concentrating on now, probably even more than the rental assistance.
Yeah, Jill, that's awesome you're able to do that. And I know that was helpful for a lot of clients. So we do deposit assistance and kind of move-in costs, and we have done that for voucher holders, but they have to be experiencing homelessness, right? And not all your folks are in that camp. So that's where we're really not able to help, is when the folks aren't experiencing homelessness or fleeing DV. Fleeing DV is in that category as well. If they're fleeing DV or experiencing homelessness or in a shelter or transitional housing, we can use our move-in costs, but I know that's not all your folks. So we can help with some, and we have, but I think it was awesome that you were able to help so many. And also that allowed, by you having that resource, right, we were helping a lot of other folks with that, with our, kind of CHG rental assistance money. So.
And Matt, what money were you using for the foster youth independence?
Same, so it's the Consolidated Homeless Grant. So that's our big rent assistance package, and it's typically designed for homeless services, though it's pretty flexible. You can do a lot with it. But we run our rapid rehousing programs, and we kind of have 3 different types of rapid rehousing programs. So we have our kind of really intensive one. That's for folks that are high barrier, like from encampments, and that's like housing search, and then we case manage. They usually get a year of rent assistance, and that's really long-term kind of intervention because of high vulnerability. There's our standard kind of 6 months. That's for less vulnerable folks experiencing homelessness, and we kind of get 6 months of assistance, and then they're on their own. And then the move-in cost is kind of our lowest, and that's usually for folks that have a voucher or like have a job and they're ready. Like all they just need, right, is that sometimes moving costs can be $5,000 to $7,000, right? If they ask for a deposit, so that's a huge barrier. That's a huge cash barrier. So that's the program we typically use. But all of that's funded by CHG, kind of under our rapid rehousing umbrella, and that's what we got the foster youth to be able to use, because they counted in that category of, we could count them as eligible for CHG, right? Because they were exiting a system of care. And so they allowed us to use that money to help them.
Got it. Okay, that'll continue.
Yes, that will continue. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great.
Yeah, especially with the numbers that it is, and that's why the move-in cost is really a great fit, because it's relatively, if we're helping someone for 6 months to a year, that's a lot more expensive. So the move-in cost is great because we can kind of spread more, right? We can kind of spread the money around to more folks, right? And so that's why we love partnering with voucher holders or the foster youth when we can. As we said earlier, it's not always appropriate, which is why it was great that you had money to help with moving costs, because it's such a barrier right now. Jill is right. It's a huge barrier to folks to come up with that cash.
And Matt, how should they get in touch with KCR to inquire about all these fantastic resources that exist?
Yeah, if you're a voucher holder and are experiencing homelessness, fleeing DV, like if you're in that category, that's definitely Housing Solutions Center. That's at 1201 Park Avenue. You can come by. In person is usually best, and to stop by for a navigator intake. Or you can call Housing Solutions Center at 360-473-2035 if you have any questions or concerns, or have trouble with transportation, or need accommodations, and we can schedule kind of a virtual a call if that's better. But yeah, all our programs are referred through Housing Solutions Center out of 1201 Park Avenue.
All right.
And the walk-in hours are 8:30 to 10:30 and 12:30 to 3. And I will put that I'll put a little blurb in the chat here, Marwan, so you can put it up there.
I was just going to ask for that. That's the one contact that I do not have already preloaded. So that is, yes, ma'am.
Can I just give a shout out to the BHA staff who had a cold weather drive this past month, and just did they take those donations today, Katie? I see pictures going back.
So we're partnering with Island Hut, who partners
Okay.
with God's Broken Home University to provide cold weather gear. And so we collected all month, and then Carisha dropped it off today.
So they're just sending pictures now. So very generous staff that we have at BHA.
All right. Shout out to Island Hut and to BHA coming together and doing the work. Yes, it's cold. It's very cold out here.
It's very cold out there.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and copy
So
that.
while you're doing that, the conversation between Jill and Matt just reminded me of I wonder when we, process a voucher and we know they're homeless and they don't have a house. If we say, oh, next stop, make sure to go KCR and because we know housing search is hard, right? So if we can get them into the systems and help while they still have a voucher, and then KCR can provide additional help, that's a great use of our partnership. And again, it is difficult. So if we have those resources, just to ask that question and say, hey, well, okay, next stop, go to KCR Housing Solutions Center and get in there. So I'll be communicating that out. I just want to make sure that's happening because it's another link that we could use our strengths together. So.
Yeah, and that would be great. Please let folks know. But also, just to be clear, so the move-in only, because housing search is so intensive, we typically reserve that for our more vulnerable clients. So the move-in program doesn't come with housing search necessarily.
I think of our most vulnerable, though. I'm thinking of them, actually. Like, what if we do have a really vulnerable person who gets a voucher? I'm not sure. So, those are things that at least...
Well, that's something we could talk about, that maybe if you have someone in that category that has a voucher, then maybe we can pair up Casemate, right?
Our EHP program, Matt, it would have been, it's so needed, that additional help. So
we need to talk about that. Is if someone's homeless and really meets a lot of vulnerability metrics, we really should talk about how we can partner with that.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you.
See, I like it. Look at that, planning and strategizing live on air, everyone. That's how it happens.
It happens here live. I appreciate it.
So what kind of updates can you share for our Bremerton Housing Authority? Monday was a big day, and was it this Monday or last Monday?
It was last Friday. Friday was our big
Friday. Last Friday.
Yeah, Kim, why don't you talk about that?
So so it's the third waitlist opening we've done in the past year through Rent Cafe. Mm-hmm. So I'm getting numbers now, and it's kind of great to have these three experiences. I mean, so it's our third waitlist opening, but that means we opened 9 waitlists for applications.
Wow.
Total.
Wow.
So our last one was actually 5 different waitlists. It was the same application. You just check a box for 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom. So we did it a little differently along with our Rent Cafe, like online portal requirements. But again, if you already had an account, you just had to sign in and update your application. So considering we opened our first Rent Cafe, we announced Rent Cafe in April of last year, opened it for registration for a month before the waitlist opening. Now we have over 6,000 people registered in Rent Cafe.
6,000?
Yes. And from what I'm looking at, I don't have the hard numbers, but I was just looking at it, and pretty sure at least 500 more people are registered this time. So it's amazing what we're opening the doors to, because yes, we've just used it to open waitlists so far, but now I don't know if there's another waitlist opening in the near future, but we're going to focus on presenting more information through that portal so you can interact with us more through like self-service type things if you want. Again, we're always here, but those who want to interact with us and do their own things at 2 a.m, they can do that too. So it's just nice to have the option to, again, uh, improve our capacity and let people decide how they want to interact with us. So
So you've opened up 3 times, and what has been the experience as you look back on transitioning to this platform?
um, it's been a very well-rounded experience. The first one was the only multi-day one, which was the biggest one, which was the housing choice voucher waitlist. And so we learned a lot then. During that one, we said, oh, what if some people need help? We'll just be everywhere. So we had volunteers from our staff like stationed at libraries and places that they could just help people in person. We found out that it would be better if they could just call us and we could help them over the phone because of technical difficulties. And so we learned a lot from the opportunity to be there in person, and then how many people were actually calling us on the phone for help. So when we opened our public housing waitlist in October, which was 2 waitlists, it was a 1 bedroom and a 2 bedroom, we instead utilize our staff volunteers, and they're so awesome for just saying, yes, I'll take some time out of my workday and answer the phone
Oh,
for
nice.
this program that I might not know much about, and I'll help the community apply. And that was amazing. It was a time and date wait list, and we were a little nervous about that because by the time you apply, that's the position you got. I'm not saying we give position numbers, but the earlier the better, right?
Mhm.
First come, first serve. So that one was pretty flawless, actually. And we were so amazed that we were able to pull that off. And it was really key that we had this temporary call center set up throughout our staff where they can just be at their regular desks and their regular phone and help people from just the user perspective. They didn't need any special technology or whatnot. They were just, hey, I don't have a computer, and they could help them over the phone. And that was amazing. And then this last one, just getting more outreach out, going to the Project Connect fairs. I think we got more applications this time, and more people actually came to the office. So during our October one, we only had like 3 people. I can't say how many, but there wasn't very many people who actually came to the office. They just called the number. So this time we had a little bit more people come to the office because I think more people were aware of it, which is great. This is what we want. So we've learned so much, and we're happy to. I can't believe we've done 3 openings in the
Yeah.
last year, 9 wait lists. And so because we didn't do a lottery system where only a certain amount of people actually get on the wait list, instead everyone who applied gets on the wait list. I don't know if we'll be opening next year, but it's always to be determined.
Well, what I appreciate about you sharing that information out is, one, from an end user, from someone in the community. It's like, okay, Bremerton Housing Authority is doing something, and then it changes, and so now you're sharing, hey, we're improving. This is why it's changed. This is how it's changed. I think that is important, just as important as the resource itself. Another thing that kind of hit my ears where you said about 500 this last time.
Just register. So everybody else was already registered. So new
So five.
registered.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a testament to the fact that there's still need out there, but that's also making people aware of Bremerton Housing Authority and being able to say, hey, we're here, we can provide resources, we can do referrals. So I think that's important too. So I appreciate those numbers.
You're welcome. And it's exciting. I can't wait to pull some more, actually.
Yeah, Katie's been instrumental in this process, both of communicating it out to the community, but then also in making sure our processes internally work to make this happen. So she's a star employee for sure for this. And I would just add one thing that has been very helpful for me in my work is being able to pull demographic reports from our software that we never used to be able to do before. We could pull them, but not to the extent and the detail that we can pull now. And so it's good to know, and we're just now starting to see ways in which we can use that information. And so in particular, I think it's super exciting to see by city or by zip code who applied. And then when we go back and we look at the who has actually leased up and where they leased up in the past year as in comparison to who applied. It's just really interesting to see this information. And Katie and I were just discussing it today because some of it is surprising to me. And, I'll just share a little bit here, but
I was going to ask you, could you share one?
I can share a little bit here, Marwan, but one of the things that surprises me, but didn't surprise anybody else around me, and I've only been here for 2 years, is that 68% of the people that leased vouchers, not including Pendleton Place or, other project-based units, 68% of those leased in Bremerton versus outside of Bremerton.
Wow.
And if you look at the waitlist demographics, there's about 50%, there's about the same amount of people in Bremerton versus outside of Bremerton applying to that wait list. And so you kind of wonder, well, what's going on here? Well, Bremerton has the more affordable housing than any place north of Bremerton. And so not to say anything bad about any other community, but it does kind of, it's a direct picture here of, Bremerton versus outside of Bremerton. And is that the picture we want? Is that, how is that the responsibility of everybody equally? Maybe yes, maybe no. I don't know. But it sure is interesting to see, right? And then even more so than I think about, well, what are these rental units that people are living in? And they have to pass an inspection, of course, for safety, but it's still the stock of housing that we have people living in, is something I think as a community we need to say, is this okay? Or what do we want to provide? And so I don't know. It's just, there's so many interesting things when you look at the information and the data. And we have 4 guiding principles to our strategic plan. And one of them is to be a data-driven agency. And so being able to take something like the wait list and turn it into data so that we can make decisions, and we can go, when we're asking for money, we can say, well, here's why you should support us in this endeavor, because here's who's in your community, and here's the bedroom sizes that they need, where we weren't able to do that before. And so it's really, it's, what's the word I'm looking for, where it gives you power. Like, you have knowledge is power, right? And so we can actually do something with it to really make a difference that makes other people think, wow, okay, this is my community. Okay, it's not just this one corridor of Bremerton that has a problem.
Oh, I love data.
I
So
know
I
you do.
appreciate that. I do appreciate that. Well, we had a couple questions in the chat. Can you say something about Mills Crossing? I can't speak to that one per se.
Yeah, I can definitely. I know that's something. I know we're running out of time, but I actually was planning on, if we had time, talking about that today. But yeah, this is really something we're really excited about. So KCR, hopefully in partnership with Bremerton Housing Authority, is we're putting an application with the Housing Trust Fund with their rapid acquisition program, and been raising money from various other sources, including Kitsap County, City of Bremerton, and potentially a few others, to actually buy Mills Crossing in Bremerton. So if you don't know, that is a 36-unit kind of townhome complex that's located in Bremerton, right behind the new transit hub, and kind of close to Goodwill in that intersection. And our plan is to apply for BHA's RFP that is coming out soon, right, Jill?
It's out right now.
It's out right now. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's and the idea would be half of those units would be project-based voucher for permanent supportive housing, and then the other half would be housing preferences for housing choice vouchers, or would be a preference for housing choice vouchers. So the goal is to half be for homeless services, and that would be for pretty vulnerable families that have been chronically homeless. And chronically homeless means you've been outside in a shelter or place not meant for human habitation for more than a year, or adding up to a year for the past 4 years. Mm-hmm. And the head of household is disabled. So that's the kind of picture of families that we hope to serve. And that would be 18 units there. And then the other 18 would be housing that we would have a preference for, because we know we need housing choice vouchers, right? And I think we got this idea from Jill, is that you can have a preference, right, for folks that are experiencing homelessness or have a voucher, right, and need somewhere to go. And so that would be the idea. So we'll see if we get the grant from Commerce. We already have a good chunk of money committed. And so the big kind of wait is, I think we hear towards the end of February. So early March, we should hear. It's the same grant that Jill applied for the units that they bought also in Bremerton, the housing. It was 5 units, Jill, is that correct?
Yeah, 5 homes.
Yeah, so it's kind of similar situation. I know Jill was kind of waiting for a few months, so we're all waiting anxiously to hear if we get it. But there's a lot of support. It's incredible. You know, the city's been incredibly supportive and committed money, and the county has committed money, around $2 million from Kitsap County, and so there's big commitment there from the county and a few other sources, which we definitely can go in a little more detail as we get closer. But and then Bremerton Housing Authority, hopefully with our project-based voucher application. So there's a lot of community support. There's a lot of folks that I think are really excited. And I know for a while, you know, Marwan, something you've always talked about, right, is what are we doing, right, to develop housing, right? How do we solve some of this problem? And so this is one of our answers, right? Something we've been kind of working on for a little bit over Christmas, and yeah, Tony and I are working on the application, writing that grant, and it's
a big one. It's not a small one.
It's a big one, but we got it in, and we're really excited about it. And and that would be a big impact, right? Because you're talking about families that are incredibly vulnerable and are experiencing homelessness, and also solve hopefully some of our voucher challenges, right? Because I think, Katie or Jill, do you know how many folks you have right now that are actively shopping?
That's a great question. I've been answering this for a long time based on information that we found out was not correct. So I'm not going to give a number. I mean, so yeah, it's a lot though. I would say it's above 50. Yeah, it used to. In one system that we were pulling from, it was above 100. But then we realized that there was a lot of people on that list that had fallen off. So because they were their vouchers expired, but we never pulled them off our count list. So our count was way too high. So anyways, we're getting that all straight. Data is everything. When you find out it's wrong, it's really embarrassing. So, but definitely more than 50. I mean, there's a lot.
So 18, I hear you, Jill. We've been there many times where we think we got some data right, and then, right, you know, Elizabeth, my data coordinator, is like, actually going through this, it's more complicated. So we can really relate to like interpreting data and sometimes misinterpreting it. But yeah, so say it's over 50, 18 takes a big chunk out of that, right? It will be a process. There are current residents, which we are not displacing anybody. There's no relocation plan because we're going to let folks leave on their own time that are currently there. So there's not going to be any type of force out or relocation, or it'll be completely up to the existing tenant. So it won't be all 36 units right away, but it'll be a transition over the next few years to get that up and running. But the first units would be the project-based vouchers that we would really want to get those 18 up, and then slowly phase in with our other kind of units that are dedicated towards affordable housing, or with that housing choice voucher preference to get those next. So that would be our goal, and we're really excited to hopefully have this be funded. Although again, it's a big if. It doesn't get funded, right? It's not for sure yet, but It is announced. I know Tony's presented to the city, and we've talked at the coalition, and so we are talking about and letting folks know that this is what we're doing, and hopefully we can make it happen. I think probably another time, Jill, we should talk about some of the Housing Developers Coalition, or I don't know, Katie, if you've rebranded that yet, but we probably need some type of name. But that's the thing, another really exciting that this project kind of came out of, and I hope at some point, for Jill, you to talk about that, because I think that's really an awesome thing that's happening.
And you were saying $2 million from the county, and I believe the city of Bremerton put in $500,000. Is that?
Yep. The city of Bremerton put in $500,000. So yeah, locally to have 2.5 locally is a big deal. And then we've applied for the max we can get from the housing trust funds, over $6 million. And so we're slowly kind of piecing it together to get. And then there's a few other sources right now that Tony's working on. So it's an ongoing project, and that's why it's still a big if, but really a lot of credit to our local politicians and the city council and the commissioners, and a lot of folks really quickly helped organize, right? Usually that's pretty unheard of to raise that kind of money that quickly. That process usually takes a long time, and I think just speaks to how close our community is and how supportive all of us are, right, and working together to get affordable housing in Kitsap, and also to increase our housing, our homeless service supply, right? So this would be a big jump for units that are dedicated towards homeless services, because right now we have we have 36 units right now. 19 of those are current project-based vouchers, right, that are actually, I guess all of those are dedicated towards homeless services. They're just different project types. So this would add 36 total in the kind of the affordable world, but 18 to our homeless service stock by adding permanent supportive housing for families, right? So this is, again, very different than Pendleton Place. We're not competing. This is not a competition with Pendleton Place at all. This is to supplement for families, for really vulnerable families, to have intensive services and housing. So.
Absolutely. So now, before I read Jeff's next comment, for the citizens that live here, is there any way that we can support those initiatives, right? And to advocate for money to flow into Kitsap County. So he says, and the HB 1046, 2023, expanding housing supply by supporting the ability of public housing authorities to finance affordable housing developments by re-benchmarking area median income limits. So can anyone speak to what can we do? Can we go to Olympia and make public comment? Can we write letters? How do we advocate and make our voices heard and get these dollars to come into Kitsap County and into Bremerton?
That's a whole big subject that we should probably dedicate more time to.
Do a deep dive?
Mm-hmm. Because
I
I'm
like it.
Going to be able to give really in-depth answers right now, even to this question on the HB 146. I mean, or 1046, that has to do with re-benchmarking area median income from the limits that housing authorities can currently finance projects from, I believe, 50% for profit up to 80%, and then maybe 60% to 80% for nonprofits. BHA typically doesn't finance projects like this, so I don't know if this is going to be something that affects us, but I need to look more into it. But that being said, there are a lot of bills right now that could use our support in terms of financial bills, but also, things like renters' rights and things like that. But before I would advocate for people to advocate, I would really want to become more of an expert in knowing that, because we want as much money. The funding ones are one thing, but when you talk about some of the provisions for renters, which are very important and we strongly believe in them, we also have this other side of wanting to attract landlords to our programs. So we do have a balancing that at BHA we're always looking at when it comes to the bills and how we support or advocate for them. And because we want we want as many available units as possible for our voucher holders. And with that comes some responsibility. And so I just would say, let's wait for another day. Let me know way ahead of time, and I will make sure and educate myself on these things. And whether we do it in March would probably be a better time period for me, just in terms of timing. But
absolutely.
Yes.
So
I need to run because I'm late, but I will. But it's great to see everybody, and Katie can finish up for BHA.
Bye,
All
Jill.
right. We appreciate you, Jill.
Okay, appreciate you.
All right. And so as we finish up here, what I did want to share with everyone, I think it's a perfect segue into what we're doing tomorrow. So, of course, housing is important, but there's more than just housing. So, tomorrow on the Conduit, we're going to be having a very special Conduit Legislative Roundup. So you can click the link there. But tomorrow will be immigration at 1. And Mara Maru from La Resistencia, I believe that's how you pronounce that. She is on NPR pretty often, so she's coming to the Conduit tomorrow at 2 p.m. And this is just going to be an ongoing show because right now folks are advocating in Olympia prison reform. So Kelly Olson from Civil Survival will be on at 3 p.m. Michelle Thomas from the Washington Low Income Housing Allowance will be on at 4 p.m. The Housing and Homeless Advocacy Days and Resident Action Project with Poe and Duhama will be on. And then at 5 p.m. will be Transportation Equity with Paulo Nunez Uno from Front and Center. So you don't want to miss that. Hopefully, maybe Joe can come on tomorrow. Matt, I don't know if you're available to jump on during that slot. It literally just be jump on for the part that is applicable to you to kind of talk about why these things are important. We're going to be taking the youth, so Kitsap Black Student Union and God's Broken Home University. G2 will be transporting a bunch of youth out to Olympia on February 20th to speak to the legislature. So really getting involved here in 2023. So we're super excited about just kind of the work we're doing, right? We're growing and moving. The Conduit will document it all live. And so, yeah, we're taking action this year.
That is fantastic. I was also, for the deep dive, Marwan, we should invite like Michelle or someone from the Housing Alliance. I'm sure because they do so much of the advocacy work, right? And I think they would really be a great resource to have. I think you worked with them, right, to testify, the Housing Alliance folks?
I did, but I haven't met them. So tomorrow will be my first time actually having a conversation with them.
Good.
Right?
Well, invite them to do a deep dive.
Yeah, no, I will. I will. So
Yeah.
Tony made that happen behind the scenes for me to be able to do that. And then they're coming on tomorrow. And shout out to Jeff because he's kind of coordinating that. And so, yeah, we're just doing different things this year. And it's only February. It's the February 2nd. We're already doing things we've never done before. So really awesome. It's going to take all of us in the community to do the work, especially as these resources unfortunately, and Jeff has said he testified at WLIH HA also. But as these resources kind of sunset, it's going to take even more of us pulling together and finding unique ways to keep people housed and receive the resources that they so desperately need. Because, see, this weather is crazy. So do stay tuned again. When the severe weather shelter opens, should always announce that. 211 or 360-373-3000. Please share out with everyone once you get that alert so we can get as many people under shelter as possible or sheltered as possible. I don't know what the correct adjective is there. Anyway, or adverb. So anyway, either one want the final word today?
I got something, Katie, if that's okay. So I just want to, because advocacy is a whole piece, but real quickly, there is something people can do right now is thank the Bremerton City Council and the commissioners because they oftentimes get negative feedback, right? And so giving them positive feedback for committing serious money. This is big money for local government, right? This is really big amount. They don't have, some of the deeper pockets that Commerce or the Fed does. So thanking them for supporting the Mills Crossing project would be huge because it is such a big commitment, and it's often they don't get that support. So I think that could be just a real quick way of showing support because that can help build momentum for investing more money in different projects, which is really what we're all about, is not just KCR, but helping Kitsap County develop thousands of units of affordable housing.
Absolutely. And the timing is perfect because City Council is this evening at 5:30. If I can find it here fast enough, I will put the Zoom link up in case you cannot attend in person. Oh, yep, I got it right here. So let me go ahead and pop that Zoom link there in the chat. I'll also put it in the description for this show so that you can go ahead and sign in. Super easy to do. Just looks just like it does now. And you got 3 minutes and you just say, hey, thank you for the work that you've done and supporting Mills Crossing, and do more, folks. We love you. Keep doing the work in 2023. Great last word there, Matt. Katie, I thank you and I appreciate you always. And Jill, who was already on. For Matt, Jill, and Katie, I am Marwan. This is The Conduit. We will see everyone tonight at 5:30 for City Council. So now I want to see you there thanking City Council. All right, everyone. We'll see you